Hi everybody, welcome back to Project Happy Home. For those of you who are new here, I'm Tanya, doctor, lawyer turned homeschool mom of 3 kids ages 12, 9, and 7. In today's video, I will be giving you a brief overview of all of the things my 6th grader is using. Now we are running on a January to December schedule this year, so we're firmly in the middle of our school year, and I think that's a really nice time to tell you about what we're using, what's working, what's not working, what we might change up next year, etc. So this is going to be more of a quick in my terms, overview of what we're using. And if you want to see specific curriculum reviews for any of these things, you should check out my 6th grade playlist, which I will link in the description box down below. You can also find it just by going to my homepage and scrolling through the playlist. But I like to separate out my curriculum reviews by subject area as well as by grade level, just in terms of making it easy for you guys to navigate. If you want to see more of this type of content, particularly for secular curricula, be sure to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell if you don't want to miss any new videos. I try to post at least 1 video a week, but I'm a little bit irregular, so sometimes that notification bell can be helpful. Okay, so without any further ado, let's get into it. Basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through all of his books, which are actually one shelf above where you can see here, and tell you exactly, what we're using for math, what we're using for science, what we're using for language arts, etc. And at the end of this video, I'll actually have my son describe his experience with all of them as well, because sometimes I think it's really helpful to hear a kid's perspective of how they've learned from this or what they don't like about it, because what I like about a curriculum and don't like about a curriculum may certainly differ from his opinion. And I think both are equally important and valid, because as we know, as homeschoolers, curricula has to work for both parties. It has to work for the teacher as well as for the student, particularly when it's in this one-on-one kind of homeschool environment. Okay, so first things first, how do I plan for him? I actually use Scholaric.com to plan for all 3 of the kids. And if you can see here up close, basically, Scholaric can print out a list, and I have little post-its to cover up his name, but Scholaric can print out a list of assignments by topic area or by date. You can print out daily lists or you can print out weekly lists. I generally do weekly lists. My son prefers by topic area. My daughters prefer by date. If you do it by date, it's like a list of all the things they should complete that day. If you do it by topic area, it's like this, where if you'll notice, he has 1 curricula and then everything for the week, another curricula, everything for the week, and so on and so forth. Scholaric allows you to group the topics or the courses by subject area. So generally it'll print out a bunch of things from language arts, a bunch of things from math, a bunch of things from science. So they're kind of grouped, which is nice. The one caveat of printing by subject is sometimes your student might have the tendency to do a bunch of easy things and mark them off their list. And then they kind of, leave a lot of heavier, longer assignments for the end of the week. In order to combat that, I try to highlight that you should be doing a writing assignment and a math assignment at least every day. You should be trying to get through 1 or 2 labs in science every week. And that way we kind of keep things moving along. This affords a lot of flexibility in terms of giving them control over how they approach their work for the week. I want them, all 3 of them, to learn that, whether or not you have a teacher or a structured list of assignments, how you approach your workload now and forevermore will probably be up to you. Some people work better under pressure. Some people like to do all of their easy things first. Some people like to do all of their hard things first. I personally don't think those hard and fast rules about eating the frog first thing in the morning and stuff is true for everybody. So I like to give them an opportunity to experiment for themselves how they work best and then figure it out for themselves. And that can evolve and change over time as well. This clipboard that you see holds not only his work list, but also the little pictures that I've printed out for his history timeline book. Another little thing I've created here is just a little printed planner of my own, and it's just a checklist planner. So I called this one the Eldest Quest for him. Put his picture in it. I tried to make it gaming style, so it lists his strengths and his weaknesses as though he's a character in a game. And then every page is exactly the same. It just has a little tracker. It basically just says today's tasks, the date, and then there's a checkbox for whether or not it's been graded, and also a list for assignments. The reason I have 2 here is because sometimes within math or within grammar, we'll have 2 different curricula to do, so that way it keeps it simple. There's a little Calvin and Hobbes quote at the very bottom here. Calvin says, "I'm a genius. I can't believe how smart I am. I've got more brains than I know what to do with." And Hobbes says, "So I've noticed." subjects listed on the side here. You could easily whip one of these up yourself as well. The way he uses this year, we used to write things down specifically, but the way he's using it right now is marking off with little stamps like what category he's done work in that day. So if he notices that he's done a bunch of composition assignments that day, or he hasn't done vocabulary spelling, then the next day the idea is that he would focus on those areas. So you can use student planners however you like. The main thing I would advise with student planners is make them as functional for both you and the student as possible. Also, make them flexible. So I would never suggest printing out all of your plans for the entire year. I would definitely stick to a week at a time at most. A daily list is also fine. I know a lot of people who just use composition notebooks or loose leaf paper and they write out their list for the day as checkboxes, and that's that. Don't feel like you need every single thing that influencers, micro-influencers talk about. All of us like reviewing things. There's certainly a lot of waste when it comes to what influencers buy for themselves, what they receive in terms of sharing. So take all of these curricula videos with a grain of salt is what I'm saying. I really like that I'm doing this video in the middle of our school year because I feel like I have a much better perspective on a lot of these curricula than I would have if I was just presenting them to you before ever cracking them open. Okay, so to get started, this is his language arts curricula pile, and this is not including his reading and literature, which is through Build Your Library, which I'll talk more about when I talk about history. So here you have Vocabulary from Classical Roots 6. This is a really nice book. If you look, you can actually start at an earlier grade. I actually have the 4, 5, and 6. And then there's A, B, C, D, and E. Every section has a very similar format where it starts off and you have some keywords, some root clues, and then it goes through after explaining a root or a suffix or a prefix and gives you some definitions. There's a few scattered pictures throughout. It gives you familiar roots, other ways of making words from those roots. If you get the teacher guide for this, it also goes into further activities you can do and more discussion you can have. So there's a short synonym exercise, meaning and context where you fill in the blanks in a paragraph. There's extending your vocabulary with more words using these prefixes or suffixes. So every single lesson is formatted generally the same, concentrating on like 2 to 4 different word roots. And then every 3 lessons or so, you have a review. So we've really enjoyed this book, and I am really pleased with how it works. Personally, I'm not a fan of standard vocabulary curricula, though I've heard great things about Sadlier, I believe, because I feel like vocabulary and context while you're reading books, while you're engaging with actual stories, is much more robust and meaningful to the student and is more easily retained than standalone vocabulary exercises, whether or not they have them in context. So the reason I like these books in particular is they really work on those roots, prefixes, and suffixes that build clues rather than standalone words. So coming through these books, the important thing to me is not that they understand every single word or know every single vocab word mentioned, but that they learn every single root. So when they go through every single lesson in here, in his own 6th grade notebook from School Nest, he writes down roots and suffixes to keep them in mind. Another book that we're using for vocab is Vocabulary Cartoons, SAT Word Power. If you haven't seen these books, I'm a big fan. They go through and they have basically a word, a definition, a cute cartoon to describe that definition, and different usages of that word in sentence form. Every, I believe, 10 lessons or so, they have a quiz, and that includes matching as well as fill in the blank in context. It's a really nice, fun way of learning vocab. My son loves cartoons. He loves humor. These are actually funny, so it's easy for him to remember. So for grammar, we're using the Well-Trained Mind this year, and this is the red notebook. This is a fairly new program. The way they have it organized is that you can do any of the colors each of the 4 years of the program. They go through all the same concepts every single year. So there's no reason you can't start with the purple notebook or the blue or the yellow. They all come with the same slim volume of grammar rules. And that's a little hardback book that sits on our reference shelf, so I don't have it to show you. And they also come with a teacher's guide that's just about as thick as this one. Now, my opinion of this curriculum is a little bit mixed. I think that it's very robust. I think if you do even 1 year of it, you really do cover almost every grammar rule that you will need. I do think it's a little verbose and wordy. And if you have a child who doesn't like to see like a page of text like this, they're not going to like this. So keep that in mind. That being said, the exercises themselves are fairly swift. So if you can see here where you see the two little happy faces, this is one exercise, this is another. Generally, I'll assign, 2 to 3 little exercises because they are short, depending upon how long they are. And I think it does a great job of doing vocab in context, talking about rules that, you might gloss over, like different types of plurals, etc., different types of tenses, different types of coordinating conjunctions, etc. It's really very detailed. If you want to know everything about grammar, this is the grammar curriculum for you. Is that really necessary though? I don't know. I don't know that we really need to have this level of grammar education. That being said, my son really enjoys it. He never complains about it. I think it's solid. For handwriting, we are using the Getty Dubé series. This will be my son's 3rd year, I believe, in it. And he's at book E. If you like basic cursive italic, then you will appreciate Getty Dubé. I think it's a very realistic way of writing. Again, I'm not looking for this exact style of writing. I'm looking for writing that is fluid, is legible, is swift. And I think Getty Dubé does a good job of creating that type of handwriting. So if you'll notice here, you can barely tell the difference between my son's handwriting and the actual pre-printed handwriting. And I think that's a success in and of itself. So it's swift. We do about a page or 2 pages every week. I'm in no particular hurry. This book is less than 60 pages long. Another book that we're using for handwriting this year is this Cursive Handwriting Practice Workbook. This is sarcastic quotes for adults and teens. I'm not always sarcastic. Sometimes I'm sleeping. The one thing I will say about this book is I wish it was more quotes, because the quotes only start at around, so it's less than half the book is sarcastic quotes. The rest of the book starts pretty standard, where you have, the alphabet, uppercase and lowercase, and then you have a section on short words, and then you have some numbers. And I don't know that that's what I thought I was getting when I looked at this book, but my son appreciates it. He laughs. I'm all about getting him to enjoy his day as he goes through his work. So for spelling, one of the first things I wanted to show you is this lovely spelling notebook by School Nest. And Megan at School Nest is one of my friends. I, full disclosure, think she's awesome. She's one of these people who has actually a very beautiful Instagram feed. And I know, you could say a lot of things about beautiful feeds and how they can be a little bit superficial and you wonder what's going on in the background. But she's one of these very authentic people who happens to have an eye for creating beautiful photos. And so I really encourage you to follow her. She also creates lots of blank notebooks, and this is one of them. So you have, a spelling notebook, and she has a primary spelling notebook for younger kids and an older one version. And basically it's just like this. There's blank lines. Each of them is numbered to 12. So 1 to 12 and 1 to 12. And they're just, they go on just like that all the way throughout. So it's a nice way to practice spelling. I'm sure this will cover us for a few more years at least. What do I use for actual spelling lists? Sometimes I'll create spelling lists from the reading that he's doing. Sometimes I will just use spelling lists from the Spelling Plus word lists. I don't actually buy the Spelling Plus curricula. I just have one copy of their word list, and I actually use them for a lot of the kids. I know, spelling by word list isn't like the best way of learning spelling and stuff, but I like having it as a measure and a tracker of their spelling proficiency. We use other things to help with spelling, like spelling and word study. These are, without question, my favorite spelling and word study workbooks, which I often think can be filled with busy work. The reason I like these is because they always start with word roots, like intentional word roots or intentional types of words that are in each week's lesson. So like unit 1, for example, it says a focus up here, and it's multisyllabic words with a stressed short A syllable. It'll have the list of words right here on the first page. So you have words like abdomen, acrobat, agony, altitude, astronaut, attitude, Canada, etc. And then it has a day, the activities for each day. And so the activities include completing sentences, you have word banks, you have synonyms and antonyms, you have some answering questions with a complete sentence. There's also analogies. These analogies, by the way, start at the first grade level for this curricula, which I think is amazing, because I think the earlier you learn the format of certain things, like what is an analogy, the easier it becomes. Learning what an analogy is in combination with using, 6th grade level words for the very first time can be much more challenging to a student than approaching more complicated words with a game, analogies that they've played for a very long time with simple words. So I don't like everything from Shell Education, but their spelling and word study I really like. I like their social studies one as well. A book that we're using for reading comprehension questions and really just learning how to take test questions with reading comprehension is Reading Detective A1 by Critical Thinking Company. Critical Thinking Company is one of my favorite curriculum companies for several reasons. Again, some of their things I think are spectacular, some of their things I think are meh. But Reading Detective, I'm in between. I think it's much more challenging than a lot of other reading comprehension workbooks that I've seen, which is why I selected it. So a frustrating thing for students can be when they take standardized exams that the questions are a little bit loosey-goosey, On the one hand, we've developed all of these higher critical thinking skills of like having a discussion about what do you think the theme is? How do you know that this character feels a certain way? And we encourage that discussion, right? We encourage multiple perspectives and all of these things. Come standardized test taking time, we then say, no, there's one answer here. And so that tension can be irritating, I think, to students, which is why I like to use reading comprehension multiple choice tests, because it gives them practice as to what these tests are looking for. And I emphasize to my eldest as he does these that there is no real right answer to these questions, but the test wants you to pick the most obvious right answer. And practicing that in standardized exams is really important, particularly when it comes to the language arts and reading comprehension portions of a test. And I say this as somebody who's always done really well on these types of tests, because it doesn't matter how well you read or how well you comprehend these stories. What matters is that you can detect what they want you to say. And I know that sounds completely antithetical to everything homeschoolers want to encourage, but by the same token, if you have a child who wants to go to college, if you have a child who wants to do well in the SAT, this is a skill they need to learn. The earlier they learn it, the easier those tests will be. So this is the type of questions that you see. You generally have about a page of reading, and then you have a page of multiple choice questions. And not only do you have the multiple choice questions, you also have, if you can see here, which of the following sentences best describe, which is a very common high school level standardized test question, and very subject to opinion. So as we have progressed through this book, though, he has gotten better and better at figuring out what they want him to say. And that is the skill that I'm aiming for. So I've been very, very pleased with this book. Last but not least, we have writing. And so for writing, we've been using a combination of 2 different curricula, and that is the Kilgallen's Getting Started with Middle School Sentence Composing. This is the student work text portion of it. And it's very swift. We actually have not been writing in this. We actually just talk about this verbally. I love that it uses examples of good literature to show students how to put these sentences together. I think it would work really well in combination with Write by Numbers, which I've heard a lot about online and I'm curious about. So if you have experience with Write by Numbers, let me know in the comment box how you feel about that curriculum. Similar to that curricula, this definitely works off model sentences. So it works off the premise that as you read a type of sentence construction in, good literature, they use both classic literature and modern, contemporary literature. Like they'll have a Stephen King sentence that mimics the same structure as like a Charles Dickens sentence in the same lesson. And you work through exactly how the subject and the predicate are working with other tools that beef up this sentence. And so you give the student the opportunity to see it done in very famous works of literature and do some examples of putting together their sentence fragments together and then create their own. So I like how swift it is. I like how compact this book is. I would highly recommend it. I plan on using the elementary level one with my daughter next year and the further levels of this as well. The other portion of writing that we're using this year is by Well-Trained Mind as well. And this is Writing with Skill. This is actually the instructor text. I have the student text somewhere. I'm not sure where my child has put it, but they look very similar inside. So this will give you an idea of like how it's formatted. Occasionally it'll give you in here exactly what your student has seen. So let's see. It has grading rubrics. It tells you exactly what the steps are for the days, just in the same way that the student book does. It gives you little examples of how to help move the student along if they're having trouble with a particular phase of the writing or phase of outlining. I really think this is well done. I think it has been a great thing to transition to from IEW Structure and Style Level A, which I've yet to do a review for, which was excellent for my son to learn how to write essays. This one opens up a child's freedom a little bit more within the constraints of an outlined essay. So it really walks you through how to do an outline of a reading selection that you've done. It then walks you through how to add to that outline, how to make it more detailed, how to pull from that outline to create topic sentences and conclusion sentences. I've been very, very impressed with this. My son will tell you probably, I think, that even though it can be really annoying at times because it does piece out every part of writing, it's very effective at making him feel more confident in his finished product. This is his reading journal by School Nest as well. Megan was really kind and she actually created this because I asked her to, because I said, please create a reading journal. I will do a review of this book later. One of my favorite things about it is that it has a finished book stack that they can add to. So it has a few pages of those. It has a page for library books. Then it has a page for reviews. So you have title, author, the date, the rating, the summary, your thoughts, any questions, and quotes. And I've just been really happy with how he does these. So my son is a little bit older, so he doesn't really want to draw the picture anymore or anything. He just sort of wants to get that part done. So he just makes a color copy of the cover and sticks it on. And I think it'll be a beautiful little thing to treasure, honestly, throughout the years. I plan on using this for a very long time. Okay, moving on to science and math. This will just be in no particular order. One of these is Thinking Analogies, again by Critical Thinking Company. I had the PDF, so I just printed it and bound it. This is A1, and it just goes through and has different logic games. Every single page is a little bit different, but it's fun. It gets a little bit complicated towards the end. It has analogies, things that we would practice in other curricula as well, so it actually has several pages of analogies. It has an opportunity to write your own analogies, and then there's some games to play as well. So he enjoys that. In terms of other logic books, we're using Logic Liftoff. This is for grades 4 through 6. And again, it has different types of questions, different types of logical puzzles. It also has more complicated puzzles like the ones you'd find in Mind Benders by Critical Thinking Company. So I really like this series. It starts off with Lollipop Logic. I can't remember the name for the one in the middle. And then it has Logic Liftoff, and then it has a few more Logic Countdown, I believe, and Orbiting with Logic. So I like it. I think it's nice and varied and swift. We are doing 2 math curricula this year. And the reason for that is because, one, my son likes variety and it keeps him motivated and interested. And also, I wanted to start teaching him concepts in pre-algebra in a more focused way while also going through a full year of what 6th grade math would be. So he is using Math Mammoth 6A and 6B, and also Understanding Pre-Algebra by the Critical Thinking Company. This book I have mixed feelings on. It is very interesting in its style. It definitely goes through with a good introduction in terms of teaching. It goes through examples. It definitely teaches the concept in this book. And then you have practice problems. It's not very heavy in terms of the practice problems. per day. Sometimes I'll just do odds and evens or something. But in addition to the arithmetic, it also asks the student a lot of theory questions, which I appreciate. So I like it, but I don't know that I love it. I don't know that it's my favorite pre-algebra program. Another one that I'm interested in is by The Art of Problem Solving. And that might be what we do next year to solidify pre-algebra, or just algebra from The Art of Problem Solving, depending on how this goes. Math Mammoth, what can I say? We've been doing Math Mammoth for a very long time. I initially bought Math Mammoth back when my son wanted to switch from Singapore to Math Mammoth just for variety's sake in 3rd grade. And Homeschool Buyers Co-op, that site happened to be running a sale where you could get all 7 levels of Math Mammoth for $140. So I bought those PDFs, and it has been such a worthwhile investment because I have used them with both the girls, and I think it's a really solid curriculum. I love that for the entire year, this is all you need. And you have 2 work texts, and they're called work texts because they are textbooks and workbooks in one. So you have a textbook teaching section and you have your workbook problems. Again, the pages are not super heavy in terms of work. Where they are, if she has a lot of repetition, what I'll do is just assign every other problem, especially for the things that he knows well already. The reason that you see so many flags in here is because I let my students bounce around in their Math Mammoth books. Certain chapters, you know, you have to do in order, but certain chapters you don't have to. Like, for example, you could be doing your negative number section and your geometry chapter at the same time, and that's fine. I like to give them that flexibility. On their list of things to do, it generally just says 2 pages a day, and we have no problems getting through the year. For science, we are using this science notebook by School Nest. The science notebook, if you want to see what it looks like inside, it starts off with a little temperature tracker, which obviously we don't use, and a page about the scientific method, which is always a nice reminder. And then it launches into these pages where you have 1 blank grid page and then a lined page with an area for an illustration. So it's been really helpful. Sometimes we'll just glue in things. Sometimes we'll actually do things like cell theory, where we draw in different diagrams. Sometimes we glue in things. So it's been nice to have one place to put all this information. Occasionally I'll create fill in the blank activities for my son from his reading, and then we'll put in diagrams that he can label, etc. The curriculum that we're using is RSO's Bio 2. We actually started using this last year. I thought it was a lot for a 5th grade year. It's recommended in Build Your Library's 5th grade. So very early on I decided, you know, we're going to slow this down and we're going to do it over 2 years. Now, Build Your Library is literature based, so it includes a lot of science living books to read as well, which I think were excellent as in terms of choices for these topics in bio. But because of that, because we're doing everything, I wanted to stretch it out over 2 years. So I think this is a bit much for 5th graders, honestly. I think it's perfect for like 6th and 7th grade. He's on the anatomy and physiology section right now. If you can see, the text includes lots of words, but also lots of diagrams to label, etc. And there's lots of labs in here. Some of the labs are extensive, some of them are not, but I like it a lot. I think it's very well done. I use it in combination with a grade level Harcourt science book. Now, I say grade level, in all honesty, I got these Harcourts from a thrift store. I have a bunch that I paid, you know, $2 or $3 for, and I'm not sure what grade level they're meant for, but I generally just look at my students' reading level and what they're studying in science and then match up the Harcourts with that. And I really like Harcourt Science. I think it's very well done. I think the pictures are great. I think the way that they highlight the key words, the way that they have review questions at the end of every section of reading, like every couple pages, if you can see, has review questions at the bottom. I think it's just really, really well done. So for these, I assign certain reading sections and I'll move along the flags from a start to a stop, depending on what they're doing in RSO or any other science. Every other year of elementary school, my son has also used Evan-Moor's Daily Science, which I think is an excellent curricula. This year, I just wanted him to focus more on labs and things like that, so that's why I left that out. But my girls both use Evan-Moor's Daily Science in addition to their Harcourts and whatever other science curricula they're doing because in the younger grades, you know, the labs and stuff don't take as much time, etc. One other book I forgot to mention for logic was this Critical Thinking Company book, The Basics of Critical Thinking. It is for grades 4 through 9. It is interesting. It's colorful. It's not super text heavy. It goes through different critical thinking problems like what is critical thinking, beliefs and claims, finding evidence, evaluating evidence, inference, facts and opinions, facts and probable truths, facts and probable falsehoods, Venn diagrams, logical connectives, advertising, agreements and contracts, common errors in reasoning, arguments, valid and invalid arguments, fallacies, analogy arguments, and using critical thinking to make the best decisions. So a lot of exercises are done this way, where they'll have a story and then they have questions like, which sentence gives you this evidence? Is that evidence strong or weak for this conclusion? Which sentences give you contradictory evidence? And then how can you balance that, right? And I really like how it goes through different concepts like peer pressure, you know, what arguments are, why we can't just stand on, you know, what we already believe to be true when other facts have presented themselves, etc. So all of that I think is important to learn, particularly in the world we live in today. So for history, we're using Build Your Libraries level 5 and 6. And of all the levels of Build Your Library, I hear the most concerns about the book list for level 5, because level 5 deals with early American history. And that particular time in our country's history involves a lot of dark topics, you know, a lot of mistreatment and maltreatment of people of color, including Native Americans, as well as the entire enslaved population in the American South. So with those two topics alone, let alone the Civil War and the Revolutionary War and death and things like that, you have a lot of heavy reading. And so if you are going to do Build Your Library for those two levels, you know, take into account who your child is, how sensitive they are, etc., before you like launch into all the books. My son has really enjoyed the books from this level so much, but he will be the first to tell you, and if you read his book reviews, there's some books where he was just devastated, and that's part of it, you know, so I'm here for all of that devastation, but that's just me. This is a history notebook by School Nest, and this is the history timeline notebook. Now, I love both of these for different reasons. The history notebook is fairly simple in how it's arranged. You have a actual grid page, like a crosshatch or graph paper page with an area for pictures, and then you have a ruled page with an area for pictures. And we haven't really been writing in this book so much as adding things like our social studies activities, which come from Social Studies Weekly, the paper, which I will show you soon. But see, so we like put in our activities there. So we've been using Social Studies Weekly for our social studies this year, and Social Studies Weekly for 6th grade is structured a little bit differently than the other grades. It more goes through world history concepts. So every paper for the week is like just a 4-sided type of sheet paper. In the end, you have this like activity page. The curricula itself also comes with a very extensive teacher guide that has a lot of extension activities and worksheets and stuff like that. In general, we don't really use those. We have a lot of other reading going on, and I'm not really into busy work in terms of worksheets for no reason. I really do like this world history level though. I think it's really nice. For my son in particular, who hasn't done ancients in a few years, it's been a really nice review of ancient history. I like that the paper goes through different areas of history. So this one's Alexander the Great, and it talks about the culture, different world regions. It generally does a biography of somebody. So here's Aristotle. And then the questions on the back all include information that can be found within the paper itself. So I really like this. For the younger levels, it's more social studies based. So it has a lot of questions about your own region in particular, which I found helpful. Is it my favorite social studies curriculum ever? I don't know. I think that for the younger levels in particular, you can get a much more cost-effective social studies curriculum by just purchasing, you know, your state's social studies textbook for that year. But it's been great for a review for world history for my son. So this is the History Timeline Notebook by School Nest, and I think it is the best history timeline notebook I have ever seen. When you open it up, it gives you a section of your own history, so the child can do their own birth story, etc. And then it has a section on prehistory, which we actually didn't use because we already studied prehistory before we got this notebook, but hopefully he'll fill it in later. And then it goes into ancient times, and every different time period in history has this cover page like this, but this is where it gets really good, you guys. See how it says the years? And they're already marked out for you. So as you go through and fill this book in, you have all the years there for you. It becomes really easy to create a history timeline without having loose leaf pages and fold outs and all of these things. So I think it's spectacular, and if I could only recommend one book by School Nest, this would be it, because I think it is wonderful. Another thing we're using for social studies, geography, history, that whole section, is this book. This is the state-by-state book for the USA by the CRAFTY Classroom. I'm an affiliate of a CRAFTY Classroom, and those links are in the description box down below. I used to use a lot of their phonics and early readers for the girls. They were excellent. This one goes through and has different pages for each state, and your student can fill out the information. And we've been doing this as we come to different states in our reading, as we come to different states in the Build Your Library curriculum, etc. So it's been lovely, and really all I think you need for a really robust state study. Another book that we've been using for social studies is this Harcourt Social Studies book. Again, I'm a big fan of school social studies books. So this one covers typical social studies topics that we all remember from school. I like discussing the questions with my son. I like assigning the reading assignments. It sort of ensures that your student is getting those key words that, you know, kids in public school are getting. The difference between climate and weather, the difference between an ecosystem and a habitat, etc. So hurricanes, growing seasons, I think the graphics can't be beat. You have excellent maps in here. You have really nice appendixes also, or appendices. So you have nice world maps, topography maps, as well as political maps. So you have a nice clear region map here. It has pictures of all the flags and country data, and then you also have a glossary in the back, which is nice. So as you encounter words, this is a nice little reference book to have. In terms of spirit and, like, you know, our own like self-betterment, we have 4 little books here, and basically one of them is this time capsule book, which my son has been working on for quite a while actually, because he just randomly picks pages to do in it, and book where you fill in different questions about yourself, different things. This is the 3-minute gratitude journal, really simple format. Basically, you have every page looks like this, and you have an area for what you're thankful for, the person that brought you joy, how you feel with little emoticons, and what was the best part about your day. Hey you guys, I'm sorry. I think my video cut out in midstream because the battery on my camera died, but I just had 3 books left to show you. 2 of them belong to our spirit curriculum, or what have you. I really love Big Life journals for kids. I am an affiliate, and my link is in the description box down below. If you haven't seen them before, I'm just going to show you some of the unfilled pages. Most of the daily pages look something like this. I've done a review just on the journal itself if you want a closer look, but it's tied in with lessons from the podcast too. So it's a really nice journal just to give kids a chance to reflect and grow and realize that growth mindset is the way to go. This other book is a spirit journal, so it's been a really nice keepsake. Each of the kids have one. They started it when they were younger, and it just keeps going. So if there's little exercises that I find online or anything like that, I cut and paste them into there, and we do them together. Inspirational quotes, copy work like that, poems, etc. Reflections on who they are, who they want to be, their goals, all of that goes into their spirit journals. And this is just a composition notebook that's been stickered over. And then we have a 6th grade notebook. I have a grade level notebook from School Nest for each of the kids, and this is the 6th grade one. We do a variety of assignments in here, so you can see there's writing assignments, there's also like fill in the blank things that I do, there's poems, there's all sorts of things. All of his writing goes into here, even though most of it is typed up. So that is his 6th grade curriculum for the most part. I haven't really talked about subjects that we do in combination with all of us, so like art study, music study, etc. I'll probably do a different video on that, but I think you can get a good idea of what has been working and how it's been going. And now I'm actually going to give you an opportunity to see his reaction to a lot of his curriculum. This is my eldest. He is 12 and in 6th grade. So how is 6th grade going?
Pretty good, honestly. The curriculums are great and really good. Like, they teach well. They don't just like say, here's a thing, now memorize it.
So what is your favorite curriculum of the ones that you've been doing this year?
Build your library.
Why?
Because as a reading curriculum, and I like reading, of course, it's great, but the books, they're so interesting. Here's one right now. This is Elijah Buxton. I'm probably saying that wrong. But it's by Christopher Paul Curtis, who I know wrote a few other books that I've read. And yeah, this is really good. See, this explains like how Black lives and segregation, how they are discriminated in the past and still kind of now. And this is why I like learning about this. I like learning about the history of people and how people treat other people and how they can treat them better.
In terms of like math, what are you like fond of and what are you not fond of? Why?
Well, I'm not too fond of my pre-algebra book, Understanding Pre-Algebra.
By Critical Thinking Company?
Yeah.
Why not?
Well, it's kind of goes a lot into stuff that it starts off with things I already know, which is always a little
and then it goes into things that
I can't understand, which is really annoying. Like, get to a midpoint, please, where I can just take a break. Math Mammoth, amazing. Writing with Skill, I'd say it is kind of long because they do have a lot of parts and steps in each week and day. But I think it's really helpful to teach you how to write because they explain why something is needed.
Like the reading selections that they pick for you to work from?
Yeah. I read some from, I believe, the Oz series, yes, about TikTok, the robot man.
Oh, right, like Pieces from Poe's.
Yes, which is great because I love Edgar Allan Poe's things. Reading Detective. So I think it's good for reading comprehension. I think it really helped for practicing for like an SAT sort of test because of the reading comprehension part. But I think it's a little annoying. Yeah. It's like the same thing every time. Multiple choice in writing. I'm getting better at the questions, but that's only because I've done it like a billion times. I feel like they should give you a little bit of change.
So how do you feel about SAT, the cartoon vocabulary book for SAT words?
I think it's really fun because they show little cartoons that explain how a word is used. They also show the pronunciation, so you don't...
So how do you feel about your RSO Science, your Bio 2?
There are two parts to that. Two sides.
Okay.
The good part, which is the fact that it teaches you a lot. And some parts they simplify so it's not too, like complicated and hard to understand. Pre-algebra, take notes. I think it's really nice that way. And it condenses everything, showing you diagrams and pictures and different little cycle pictures. But the other part is the famous science series they have in there, which I think is good. I just don't like doing it.
180 Days of Spelling and Word Study?
That's great. Okay. I just love it. Vocabulary from Classical Roots.
Yeah.
I think it's really good. They kind of do loop the same series of exercises, but on occasion they will do something different, which I really like. Like, I got to write my own article. They gave me a head, like a little title, and I just wrote a little paragraph on that. It's really nice because they teach you different roots that you can just write down to help you memorize. And now I know what a bunch of different things come from. And it explains why the word is that word. States, yes. That one's good because it teaches you simple geography, the states of the United States of America. And I've learned stuff that I never knew before. So this tiny one and this humongous one.
Yeah, and that's really all you need.
I prefer this one. The only real reason I need the other one is because this actually tells you the statehood order.
This is an example too, I think, of like where you can have a really beautiful book that is worth having, but that isn't as informative as like the much less expensive paperback.
The timeline, the history timeline, I think is fun because, well, I get to put little stickers of everything that's happening in history on the dates, but also at the beginning, it tells you this little section called My History.
Yeah.
So you can start from like the day you were born.
We still have to print out those pictures for you.
And you can keep adding it like every day of your life. It doesn't have to be just a grade, you can keep it. The states and regions is pretty basic almost. Like it just tells you these different landforms and geographies, where they are, what they look like, and simple words, but that are good to know. I prefer Harcourt Science. I think they did a better job on that book.
Okay.
The basics of critical thinking is great, but understanding pre-algebra, not so great. I think it's
And
funny.
we also love Mindbenders.
Yeah.
So
Mindbenders is amazing.
I would say the most consistently awesome curriculums that we have used, you and I together, have been Build Your Library and Math Mammoth. I think those have been consistent winners for us. We never think about really switching. How do you feel about not having done Lightning Literature this year?
Hewitt is good because it assigns reading books, but it also teaches you about how to diagram, and you're diagramming sentences from the book. But I prefer to replace that with Writing with Skill and BYL. One, BYL gives you a lot more books, a bigger variety. Some epic books, some boring books, and some just super fun books that you definitely want to read again. And Writing with Skill teaches me how to diagram a bunch of things pretty straightforward without sticking a bunch of extra words in there. Oh, Grammar for the Well-Trained Mind? Like, the way they show how to diagram is good. I think some of the writing parts are a little annoying, like the fact that you have to write every preposition in alphabetical order.
But we didn't do that assignment.
Yeah.
Okay, so we skipped some of the assignments from Grammar for the Well-Trained Mind because I don't feel like they contribute that much to his writing skill or his grammar abilities. He's pretty instinctively good at grammar, so he doesn't have any issues with prepositional phrases or anything like that, so we don't really find the need to do that. Sorry. We keep our reading books for Build Your Library and for our other literature-based curriculums on these shelves, and you can see here that they all have these little stickers to label them for what curriculums they're using. To give you an idea of BYL for grade 5, everything with these blue stickers and some of these green stickers are from BYL 5. Up there on that top shelf you can find BYL 6 with all those little red stickers. So there are a lot of books when you do literature-based curriculums, obviously, but I wouldn't have it any other way. So overall, though, are you pleased with the curriculum choices for 6th grade?
Yeah, I really like them.
If you had to eliminate one, what would you eliminate going forward, like for 7th grade?
You know, I think they're all pretty good. I'd probably say either Harcourt, maybe just because of the simplicity, or Critical Thinking Co.
So Harcourt for social studies,
Yeah.
and Critical Thinking Co for their pre-algebra.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that you've been doing great. So I think 6th grade is going really well. In particular, you know, with ADHD and everything, I think it is extraordinary. But I have been telling all my friends that you have been such a pleasure to teach this year, and I've just been thrilled to be your teacher. And so it has been a pleasure all the way. All right, kiddo, I appreciate you giving us your opinion. Okay, you guys, as always, thank you so much for spending some of your time with me. I know it's valuable, and I wish you all the very best day.
Bye.